Looks similar to how the mini bar stuff works, but there will be a lot more options. Okay, and you'll get to see the path you take through. But I'll explain all that on Friday. So, we're gonna go through this, practice problems today, the check-in problems tomorrow, and Friday I'm gonna start explaining the sum of it. When we come back from fall break, we'll start a new unit. We'll start equations. So, for now, we have a couple of practice ones just to practice the newest things we've done. The first one is asking us to simplify exponents. So, if I have these exponents, so I have a parentheses and an exponent on it, I'm going to distribute it in using multiply. So, 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 4 is 12. Same thing on the bottom. B squared times 2 is 4. A to the 5th times 2 is 10. That does say 5, right? Mine's a little blurred. Do we see how I got those numbers? Multiply the exponents. Once I get here, what I'm going to do is subtract the exponents. Multiplying adds the exponents, dividing subtracts the exponents. So if I look at A, that's 8 minus 10. For B, it's 12 minus 4. Twelve minus 4 is 8. 8 minus 10 is negative 2. The last step would be to say I'm not allowed to end with negative exponents. So anything with a negative exponent is saying like, hey, a negative 2 is actually a squared, but it's on the wrong side. That's kind of what that means. It has to go to the bottom. Alright, does that one make sense? That's pretty much almost all the exponent laws in one go. Now remember, if I was multiplying those, like if I was multiplying this, that I would add the exponents, right? And I would get 8 to the 18th. If you understand that, then you've got all the exponent laws down. Are there questions about that? All right, the bottom one. Simplifying expressions using distributive property. I know it's distributive when I have something multiplied to a parenthesis. Now that parentheses itself doesn't have an exponent, so I'm good. So I can take this 3 and multiply it in. I can take this negative y and multiply it in. Multiplying numbers by variable stuff doesn't affect the variables. So 3 times 1 is 3. So that first one is just 3xy. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, and there's a y squared there. Because again, the variables and numbers aren't going to do anything to each other. If the numbers are going to multiply to numbers, variables multiply to variables. For the negative y. Negative y times 2y. I'm going to multiply the numbers, negative 1 times 2. Y times y, y squared. And again, remember that. If I'm multiplying variable stuff and they're the same, I have to add the exponents together. Now, if they're different, like we're going to see in this next one, negative y times positive x, if they're different, can't do anything, just leave them apart. The number-wise, that's still negative 1 times 1, so it's negative 1. But the x and the y can't combine. Does that one make sense?
So basically, you just add in, so like the first one where it has 3, you just add it into every section.
Multiply it. There, yes. So it's 3 times xy. But since the variables and the numbers can't combine, there's technically a 1 there. So 3 times 1. But then xy just follows it. The only time that the variables will change is if you multiply like y times y, like something times itself. Then the exponents will change. Different.
So Why wouldn't
Does
you
she
put
know
3x
about,
and then 3y?
crowds today?
Because the rule is that multiply goes over add.
With the purpose
Multiply
room?
doesn't go over
For
multiply.
archery?
So x and y is already multiplied.
Oh,
So
so,
it's just 3 times that. Now I can do
I really
this.
wanna go today,
at
but I don't know
track,
if my
but I
grandma
can't
will
do it
let me.
She pull it tomorrow.
So, because if I did that, it would be fine. It wouldn't make any sense.
Is it
Like,
like-
I have 3 times
Okay.
1. I don't like 3 times 1 plus 1. I wouldn't do.
I really
So I
wanna
can
go.
3
drive.
times 1.
It don't work
3
because
times
like
1
everybody
times 1. I would do.
everybody who pulls out the trials.
1 times 3. 1 times 3. Make it 9.
So like you could shoot 2 and not be told out.
Listen, I got like 4 more people, 5 more people to do
Now I just
archery
combine like
this year.
terms. The first term has x, y.
Is they queen about
So does this term.
She's one,
These
Issa's
have white
one,
squares, so they're not
Hannah,
gonna
Michaela, and Imberly.
3 minus 1 is 2. So remember, when we're adding and subtracting, combining our
Plus last
terms,
year, you know who I got
we
to
only
join?
combine the coefficients.
Hey, Lily.
Oh yeah.
I'm
These two are
literally the
alike.
only reason she
Minus
joined. I
3
don't like
minus
her
2
at
is
all, though.
minus 5.
I wish I didn't tell her to join.
But she didn't really good. She lucky carried those all day.
Now those two are not alike, so I'm stuck and I can't combine them.
So you got the 3, or the 2xy, because you subtracted the entire.
When you're adding and subtracting them, you only combine the coefficients. So it'd be 3 minus 2.
Well, still.
The only
I
way
don't
the
know.
powers can change
I
is
think
if
we
you
did
go
like
forward.
Yeah, she said
Let's say
she's
there's
done
one
archery
square, you
before.
have negative 3 of them, minus 2 of them, I have minus 5 of them.
How do you get a
Does
lot?
that make sense?
Yeah. What about her?
I feel like we only can lock it.
Are you
The
gonna
questions
lock
about
in,
these two?
Are you gonna lock in?
Alright, the last thing of the unit on expressions that we're going to talk about is what's called evaluating expressions. When we first introduced what a variable was, the whole point of them was to say, hey, this is going to stand for something I either don't know or I want to be able to change. I want it to be able to change to something else. When we give the variable that value, that's what we call evaluating. Alright, so if I say evaluate an expression, what I'm saying is go to the variables that are in that expression and give them value. So I'm going to use this x squared minus x to show you the best way that I know how to track it. So if I do x equals 3, that's what it was. The easiest thing to do is to rewrite it, but put a parentheses where every variable shows up. So instead of x squared minus x, I'm going to put parentheses squared minus parentheses. You leave numbers alone, so like squared, even though it's an exponent, it's a number, leave numbers alone. Now every place that had an x, I'm going to shove that number in. Right, now this one, it seems dumb, like it won't matter, but later when you accidentally have like 2 negatives or something, you don't have to track all the negatives and stuff like that. It'll do it for you. 3 squared is 9. Minus 3 is 6. So what that's saying is that expression, x squared minus x, has a value of 6 when x is 3. Okay, so we are allowing it to change. Right? So I start a variable, it varies. If I make x 3, then 6 is the result. So x squared minus 6, x squared minus x doesn't equal 6 right, all the time, but when x equals 3 it does. Does that make sense?
So if the 3 is squared and that's 6, then 6 minus 3 is
3 squared is 9.
Oh,
Yeah, remember 3 squared means 3 times 3.
okay.
Does that make sense so far? Now, I only have these 3 examples I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you the rest of the time to do the practice problems and ask questions over anything that you would need before the quiz problems tomorrow. So this says evaluate the expression for x equals 2, y equals 3. So I'm going to leave the number alone. Put in parentheses every time I run into a variable. So that first parentheses was x, right? And it wants x to be 2, so I'm going to put that here. The other two parentheses were y, so I'm going to put those in there. Now I just have to simplify numbers. 3 times 2 is 6, times 3 is 18. And 18 plus 3 is 21. So in other words, when x is 2 and y is 3, that expression is 24. Does that one make sense? The second one, I have x squared plus x y. Which again, the squared is of numbers, I'm going to leave it alone. It wants these x's to be negative 2. It wants the y to be 1. So I'm going to put those in where they belong. Now, if you're using your calculator, which you are perfectly allowed to do, you have to be careful with squared. If I type this into my calculator exactly like that, this is what it's going to say. Which is wrong. Now, the calculator isn't wrong in the sense of what it's doing. It's wrong in the sense that it doesn't know what you're asking. When you do this, when you want to square something on the calculator, you have to put parentheses around the thing you're trying to square. That way it gives you the actual answer, which is 4. What the calculator sees, it doesn't see negative 2 squared. It sees the opposite of 2 squared. That's what it sees. It's doing order of operations. Multiply comes after exponents. So it's doing exponents first and then doing the negative. That's not what you mean, though. What you mean is take negative 2 and square it. Does that make sense? And that's a calculator being too strict for the rules. So when I type that in, just make sure that you put a parentheses around anything that you're squaring, and you'll never have to worry about that. Negative 2 squared is 4. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. So when x is negative 2 and y is 1, that whole expression becomes 2. Does that make sense? The questions on that so far? So this last one, it looks a little more complicated, but I'm going to do the same thing. X minus y. And then on the bottom, x plus y. Now, x is 4, it says. It says evaluate for x equals 4 and y equals negative 3. These two are the x's. These two are the y's. On the top is what I'm referring to. That you have to normally be very careful of it. But if you use the parentheses, you don't have to worry about as hard. Here I can clearly see it's 4 minus negative 3. I have a double negative. So when minuses are right by each other, that becomes plus. 4 minus negative 3 is 4 plus 3, which is 7. Now, if you don't put the parentheses and you just plug numbers in, sometimes it can get really confusing of when to keep the negative and when to change it. When you do it this way, you can clearly see, like, nope, the minus was there, this is negative, so it's a double negative, it becomes plus. 4 plus negative 3 is the same as 4 minus 3, so 4 plus negative 3 is 1. So that whole thing turns into 7. Are there questions about evaluating?